Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Jerry Gilbert. I'm the relatively new president of Marshall University, and I'm filling in for Dr. Alan Gould, who is the executive director of the Drinko Academy and who cannot be with us this afternoon. It's my pleasure, on behalf of the Academy and Marshall University, to welcome you to this initial event of Constitution Week when we celebrate our nation's Constitution. This is the 7th annual presentation of the series named in honor of our late, great senator from West Virginia. It's entitled the Robert C. Byrd Forum on Civic Responsibility. Before getting on to our program, I want to recognize a very special person whose contributions in putting together today's event are probably as important as anyone's. And that individual is Lieutenant Colonel Michael Steelman, Professor of Military Science and Commander of the Marshall ROTC program. Without a doubt, Lieutenant Colonel Steelman carried the heavy load in bringing the Byrd Forum to fruition, and so, Colonel, sir, we thank you, and please rise to be recognized. By way of introducing our program today, it's my pleasure to present to you Ms. Kelly Gregg, who is a senior majoring in healthcare administration and who also proudly serves as the Cadet Battalion Commander of Marshall's ROTC. Cadet Gregg will begin the program by sharing with us some of the highlights and important events in the remarkable career of our distinguished guest speaker. Cadet Gregg.
General Anthony G. Crutchfield began his military career in 1982 after graduating from Marshall University as a distinguished military graduate receiving a regular Army commission. General Crutchfield is an Army aviator who has commanded at the company, battalion, and brigade levels, as well as serving as the commanding general for U.S. Army Aviation Center of Excellence from 2010 to 2012. From 2012 to 2014, General Crutchfield served as the Chief of Staff of U.S. Pacific Command. In June 2014, Lieutenant General Crutchfield assumed his current duties as the Deputy Commander for U.S. Pacific Command. Please welcome our distinguished honoree, Lieutenant General Crutchfield.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Please, well, thank you very much. Please sit down. Is somebody coming inside that's important? It's not me. Thank you. How is everybody this afternoon? Great. It is great to see you here. Thank you for coming. So I don't know if you're one of the cadets, I don't know if you were, I call it volunteered or voluntold to be here, but thank you for being here. For those of you who are not the cadets in uniform or out of uniform and are just part of this great university, this wonderful university. I don't know if they were giving away free scholarships that made you come, but thanks for coming anyway. I don't have anything to give away. I was asked to come here today to talk to you about our Constitution, something that I not only know a little bit about, but I live it each and every day, and I have for the last 35 years of my life. And I'd like to share some of that experience with you. So today, what I'd like to do is talk about how the U.S. Constitution is an everyday part of my everyday life and point out some examples of that. I would also encourage you to read the Constitution and think about how the Constitution affects you. Because I assure you, there is something, if not a lot of things in the Constitution that affect your everyday life. And if you haven't read it, you won't know it. I'll try to point some of that out. And then everybody's got to have trivia, so I got a few trivia things about the Constitution that I learned that I didn't know, but they're trivia things. And I think you'll find it very interesting, as I did. And then we'll save a little time for discussion, for questions and answer period. So be thinking about that. You got to think, see, it's testable. It's on the tests, okay? That's what you always ask. That's what I did. If it's on the syllabus, is it testable? This is testimony that I'm going to ask you, hopefully, to ask me questions at the end. I, Anthony Gerard Crutchfield, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and I will well and faithfully execute the duties of the office upon which I'm about to enter, so help me God. That is the oath of office that I took here at Marshall University 35 years ago. I often take that oath regularly as I've been promoted through the ranks. You renew your oath. It's like a marriage. You renew your marriage vows. Every person who enters the military, any branch of the military, has to recite an oath similar to that with slight differences depending on the rank, but slight differences. But every one of them have the following sentence in the oath: that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States. Every oath has that line in it. Even to death, you take that oath to defend it with your very life. So I always ask people when I re-enlist soldiers, or I say the oath for officers getting commissioned in the military, I ask them this question. I'm going to ask you the same question. Have you ever read it? Have you ever read the thing that you stood here and raised your right hand and said, I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States, even with my life, and never read it? If that's the case, Ron, I'd say I got some land in swampland in Florida I want to sell you if you don't want to look at it. Most soldiers, unfortunately, that I ask that question of, they say they've never read it. So what I do is, everyone, I hand them a little pamphlet. Hopefully you got one coming in. I ask that you get one if you don't have one of the Constitution. I give that to every soldier. I want you to take it. That's your parting gift from me. That's the only thing you get for free from here from me. I would like for you to take that. I would like for you to read it. I would like for you to understand it, because it is our Constitution. Why is this important to me? It's important because of the oath that I took, but also I reflect on something that Thomas Jefferson said. Thomas Jefferson said, "My God, how little do my countrymen know what precious blessings they are in possession of, and which no other people on earth enjoy." It's the truth, isn't it? It's still relevant, isn't it? So much so that in 2004, our Congress said, we're going to have Constitution Week. Well, there's a reason for that. Probably because of maybe some of the words of Thomas Jefferson. That we, as an American people, have liberties and rights that in many cases around the world, people don't have. I know that for a fact because I've traveled to a lot of those places. And just this last year, I flew about 390,000 air miles in coach. All right, so generals do not fly business class in coach. In fact, I always tell people all the time, Anthony, I like that name, Anthony. That's my name. But you're going to be successful, I can tell. So people always say, I work for a 4-star admiral. He's the most powerful military person in the U.S. Department of Defense. We're responsible for 52% of the world. We have almost 400,000 service members that are assigned to us. 60% of the Navy's fleet is in the Pacific. We have a lot of stuff to do, right? Well, my boss, very, very important man, he flies around in his own airplane, nice airplane. It's blue and white. Has United States of America written on the side of it. And people say, General, don't you have your own plane? I said, wait, Jada, I said, you got me confused with my boss. He flies in a blue and white plane, says United States of America. I fly in a blue and white plane, it says United. It doesn't have the of America on it. United Airlines. That's what I fly. That's what I fly. So that's in coach. Middle seat. In the middle seat. You got to have the middle seat. I told you earlier, I said, I'm going to kind of talk about, this is the pamphlet I was talking about. I was going to point out some things for you that are in the Constitution that are pertinent to my everyday life. And so I will first start by reading the preamble. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility. First, note how it affects me. Provide for the common defense. Provide for the common defense in the Constitution and general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States of America. So the first thing that I would submit to you that in my everyday life is Congress, based on the Constitution, only has to raise money really to provide for one thing in the Constitution. It is not responsible for any type of social welfare program. Doesn't say that in the Constitution. Anywhere. It doesn't have to provide you free education. Anywhere in the Constitution. The only thing it says in our Constitution is what? Provide for the common defense. It's the only thing that Congress has to raise money for. Now, that's not to say those other things are not good. I'm not trying to say that. I'm trying to merely point out there's only one thing that they have to raise money for. It's in the Constitution. It does affect my life. A strong, secure military is very important, of course, to me. And I think it would be important to you and most Americans that we have a strong, secure military foundation to what? To provide for the defense of the nation. The other thing that's in the Constitution, that's in my everyday life, that many countries, and I'll point out one in particular, that has no idea of how we do this, and that is civilian rule over the military. I firmly believe in it. There are many countries that have it, but only one like ours. And there are several that do not have civilian rule over the military. And in fact, there are countries that have military rule over the country. And that's not good. You know what? I don't want to be in charge of the country. I don't. I want to provide for the defense of our country. To take our orders from our commander-in-chief, from our elected officials. I don't have a problem with that whatsoever. And why do I not have a problem with it? Because I took an oath to the Constitution of the United States. And in that oath, it says civilian rule over the military. And I take that very, very seriously. Where does it say it? Article 1, Section 8. And it's talking about Congress and what responsibilities Congress has. And it's on page 7, about a quarter of the way down. It says to provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia, and for government and governing such parts of them as may be employed in the service of the United States. That basically means civilian rule over the military. Congress sets the UCMJ, the Uniform Code of Military Justice. It's congressionally mandated because of the Constitution. I take my orders from the President of the United States and, of course, the people who are elected in the United States. It doesn't matter what my personal feelings are, if I agree or disagree with what I'm being told to do. Why? Why is that? Because I said I would support and defend the Constitution of the United States. I'm often asked, not to be political, but I'm often asked, well, who are you voting for? And by the way, it's not just this election, it's previous elections. Who are you voting for? First thing I tell people is, as a military officer, and certainly as a general officer, I am apolitical. It doesn't mean I don't have the right to vote. I am a U.S. citizen. I have a right to vote, and I do. I exercise that right. I will continue to exercise that right. But you see, for me, on January the 20th, whoever is elected, my life stays the same. My life, it doesn't matter if the person I voted for wins the election or not. On January the 20th, the commander-in-chief is my commander-in-chief. I take that very, very seriously. I live by that. I don't have a problem with that. Because, why? I swore an oath to the Constitution of the United States, which says in Article 2, that the President of the United States is the Commander-in-Chief of the military forces. It says that in here. I think it's Article 2. Don't quote me on that, but it's in there. It's in there. It's like that old soup commercial. It's in there. You know, some of you too young know that soup commercial, Ron. It's in there. I can't remember what soup it was. Huh? Prego spaghetti. It's in there. It's in there. Thanks, Matt. Well, actually, sorry. Article 2, Section 2, page 11. The President shall be the Commander-in-Chief of the Army and the Navy of the United States. It's in the Constitution. And because I swore an allegiance, I swore to this Constitution, my Commander-in-Chief on the 20th of January will be whoever wins the election of the United States. And I have no problem with executing that order. You know something that is not in my oath and is not in the Constitution? There are a couple of things. First of all, what's not in my oath, I don't take an oath to any person. I do not, it doesn't say to, support and defend the Congress of the United States or the President of the United States. It says the Constitution of the United States. So that's something that's unique to our military with the civilian rule of the military. We do not say an oath to a person, to a king, to a dictator, to anyone, but we do to the Constitution and what it stands for. The other thing that's not in the Constitution, anywhere, you can read it cover to cover, and you can challenge me on it and read it, Anthony. Nowhere in the Constitution is the word democracy used. Nowhere in the Constitution is the word democracy ever used. Ever. Some other things that I'll tell you that do affect my life in the Constitution, then I'm going to turn it to you and ask you to think about your lives and how this document, written so long ago, affects your everyday life, even when you may not think it does. I'll give you one example, and Ron, Dr. Gilbert, excuse me if I repeat myself. I think I was talking to you, Ron, last night about this. So there are countries in the world who do not have civilian control of the military. One such country is Myanmar, also known as Burma. I've been to Myanmar probably, 3 times maybe? 3 times in the last year or so, 15 months. I've met Aung San Suu Kyi. You know who Aung San Suu Kyi is? I've met her. I've sat in her office and talked to her. Wonderful woman, pretty fascinating, in fact. You know what Aung San Suu Kyi is trying to do for the country of Myanmar? Do you know what they're trying to do? They're trying to be like us. They want to be like Mike. Remember Michael Jordan? You're like, Mike, they want to be us. And they're trying to form a democracy in Myanmar, in Burma. So in helping them do this, recently, because of some changes that have made, they had the first election, actually, a few months ago, and elected someone. It wasn't somebody, some general come down and said, oh, I am in charge. So we're trying to help them through this process. And so I was asked by the U.S. State Department and our Secretary of State to accompany another senior member of the State Department to Myanmar to try to talk to the head, he's a military guy, he's a 4-star general, and to go talk to him, to try to get him to understand this concept of civilian rule over the military, to try to get him to understand it by seeing it. They thought it'd be a good idea. I had no idea what I was getting into. And I'd never met the gentleman before. And so me and the State Department representative, we had our points. We knew what we were going to say. We knew how we were going to say it. We had rehearsed it. And we even down to the visual. Like when we walked into the room of the office, we made sure that he was in front, that the civilian was in front, followed by another senior civilian, followed by me. It was a visual we wanted, that the general is behind the two people who by our Constitution run our military, right? That's what we're trying to convey visually. So we walk into the office just like this, and you're the military dictator. You kind of had, Rebecca, you kind of had that look. So you're going to be my dictator for today. Got it? So we walked into the room. A very senior member of the State Department was two people in front of me. As we walked into the room, I'm behind them. I made eye contact with that general, with you, Rebecca, and he stood up. So I was in my uniform. He stood up, completely ignored the two, came right to me and shook my hand. You see, for him, the power laid in this uniform, because that's what he knows. He completely, in my opinion, ignored the two senior State Department gentlemen, who are both good friends of mine. And so I said, wow, we have a long, long way to go to get this concept across. And the entire time, that's what we tried to do. As we were talking to Rebecca, we kept saying, but every time he would answer the question, he would look at me. He would look at me and talk to me. And I tried to get the conversation, over this way. But he would talk to me. I use that example because it's a personal example where there are places that, number one, do not have this, do not understand this, but many people in that country that want this. We have it. We have it. Do we covet it? Do we read it? As Americans, do we understand it? Is it in our lives? It is in my life. Every day of my life, for the last 35 years, it has been in my life. Is it in yours? Is it in your life? Do you know what it says? Do you know how it affects your life? What's in it? Why is it important? And I challenge you today to ensure that you read it. And then on the back, there's a promise, a little promise. You can read this promise here. And it's asking you to pledge that you'll read it, understand it, share your thoughts about it as well. Okay? Now, the fun part, I told you I'd give you trivia, right? And then I'm going to open it up for questions here in just a minute. But trivia, constitutional trivia. And I learned something doing this, by the way. So, here you go. You ready? Ready for it? The U.S. Constitution has 4,400 words. It's the oldest and the shortest written constitution of any major government in the world. Did you know that? Do you know that many, many, many people want to use our Constitution? I can name for you several countries that use our Constitution as the basis of theirs, and still they can't get it right. But how can a group of individuals sit down so long ago and write a document that's still germane today is pretty remarkable. That's only been amended how many times? 27 times. Is pretty remarkable to me. Is it remarkable? It's very remarkable. I don't know how they did it. I really do not know how they did it. But they did. Speaking of amendments, another little trivia question, Rebecca, since you got that right. You know there have been 11,000 proposed amendments. In other words, 11,000 times somebody says we need to change the Constitution of the United States. 11,000 times. It's probably counting. It's probably more than that since I've Googled it. You know, probably 11,001. Of the 11,000, only 33 ever made it into a committee to even talk about. The rest of them never, you know, I guess they fell on the cutting room floor. They never made it anywhere. Only of the 11,000, only 33 were worthy to even talk about. And of the 33, only 27 have been ratified, who've gone through the process to be ratified. 27. And one of them we changed our mind on. Sounded like a good idea at the time, but it ain't a good idea anymore. Let's change that. That's the beauty of the Constitution. That's the beauty of the way they wrote it. That's the beauty of how it's structured. It has an ability to absorb and contract based on the society of which it governs. Brilliant. Brilliant. In my opinion, brilliant. Do you know there's a couple spelling errors in it? They didn't have spell check back then, you know? But the most glaring, you know what the most glaring misspelled word is? It's not in that little pamphlet, because the pamphlet is not a complete reproduction, it's just the words of it. The word Pennsylvania is misspelled under the name of the person who signed for Pennsylvania. Who was it signed for Pennsylvania? I can't remember. It's misspelled in the Constitution. Probably not in that book. In fact, I looked in that book to see if it was spelled right. Of course, it's printed, and they did not spell it wrong. They were going to get that right. But Pennsylvania. Okay, yes, sir. So here, because of his poor health, Benjamin Franklin needed help to sign the Constitution. As he did so, tears streamed down his face. Remember now what he went through in trying to just get us to the point to sign this thing, and all the years that it took him, and all the arguments, you know, that it took to come to this agreement. It was tough. Put yourself back in those days. Number one, I try to do this, you know, in my mind. Let's try to put this in perspective, because today it's easy to look back and go, wow, what a brilliant document. Civilian rule of the military, that's great. High five. But back then, it was treason, right? So the Declaration of Independence was the first chip on the table. Just a few years prior to this, bam, hey, look, England, okay, I know we still talk the same, but we're done. We're done. That's huge. That is, what, in terms of today, what would that be like? What could that be like? That's like going to Marshall University and saying you're a WVU fan. Come on. So that was treasonous. You could be killed for that. But these individuals did it. They did it. Not only they say, we are done, King, we're done. And oh, by the way, that's our declaration. We're done. Oh, you want to fight? Okay, we'll fight over it. We're going to fight over this thing, have a little scrum, fought and won. Then we say, okay, now what do we do? All right, we got what oh my gosh, we got what we want. We got a country. What are we going to do? Right? What are we going to do? So guess what they did? Let's write a rule book. Let's write a playbook. Let's write the thing that's going to govern us. And they sat down and did it from scratch. And they didn't have someone else's to go by. From scratch, they wrote it out. Remarkable. You probably say, how can anybody be so excited over the Constitution? I am, Rebecca. I am excited over the Constitution. When they wrote it out, I'm stop messing with you. When they wrote it out, when they wrote the Constitution out, it was written, penned, not written. It was the person that, penned, that wrote it. His name was Jacob Shallis. He was a Pennsylvania General Assembly clerk. He did it for $30. Today, if we asked him to do it, it would be the equivalent of $789. So a clerk misspelled Pennsylvania. I didn't think about that till just now. A clerk. Because we paid him $30. He was the lowest bidder. That's why it was spelled wrong. You want more trivia here? When the Constitution was signed, the United States population was 4 million people. Of course, it's over 300 million now, 321, I believe. Philadelphia was the nation's largest city with 40,000 inhabitants. That was the largest city. It's amazing, isn't it? Here's something I really didn't know. A proclamation by President George Washington and a congressional resolution established the first National Thanksgiving Day on November 26, 1789. What do you think the reason was? You think the reason was turkey? Turkey and making peace with the Native Americans? The reason for the holiday was to give thanks for our new Constitution. I never knew that. Because that's not the way we talk about it today, right? Thanksgiving is to say thanks to the Constitution. Not all the other things, It's not a Black Friday sale. It's not to say thanks to the malls, It's not, it's none of that. It's to give thanks to the Constitution. I didn't know that. George Washington and James Madison were the only presidents who signed the Constitution. Of course, they were presidents, well, George being the first, right? The first one that took the president's oath is in the Constitution. Did you know that? The oath that the president takes is written in the Constitution. It's written in there. I think it's Article 2, near the section that I said was he's the commander-in-chief. What the president, his or her, says in the Constitution, it's in the Constitution, the oath. The words, "so help me God," are not. They were added by one of the presidents, and now I cannot remember which one it was. It was added. But it's not in the Constitution. It wasn't written in the original. It's in there, like the Prego soup is in there. I told you the word democracy doesn't appear in the Constitution. I like this one. There was a proposal at the Constitutional Convention to limit this. Now remember, take yourself back in time. What they feared most, what the founders feared most was, which is the reason they put civilian control of the military, what they feared most was, one of the things was what? A coup, a military. They didn't want a king. They didn't want somewhere where the military got too strong and took over the government, like happens in a lot of places. They foresaw that. They did not want that to happen. They were very, very afraid of that, and therefore they wanted this at the Constitutional Convention. They wanted the following thing, and George Washington, kind of sarcastically said something that I think is pretty funny. Here it is. There was a proposal at the Constitutional Convention to limit the standing army for the country to 5,000 men. I told you why. They didn't want a big army. George Washington sarcastically agreed with this proposal, as long as a stipulation was added that no invading army could number more than 3,000 men. That's good, isn't it, Rod? That is good. Okay? So it ebbs and flows. It gets large, it gets small based on, where we are in history. The median age in America at the end of the 18th century, this period, was 16 years of age. Today, it's around 34 years of age. 19 of every 20 citizens in our country lived on the land, and 70% of the land was worked by its owners. So most people, we were a nation of people who worked the land, who farmed. We were a nation of farmers. We didn't really turn into an industrial country, of course, until probably the beginning of the 19th century, into the 19th century, and of course, the beginning of the 20th century. But we were mostly farmers. We were rural inhabitants during this time. So if you think about that, think about how hard this must have been to write a document for people who did not have cell phones, who did not have Facebook, who couldn't tweet anything, can't Snapchat stuff out. Think how hard it must have been to write a document like this document, for it to be applicable for so many years, for a country like ours to have gone through so much, good and bad. Our country has been through a lot. I don't need to give you a history lesson on the things that we've done, the mistakes that we've made, the corrections that we made for those mistakes, but the things that pulled at the fabric of the United States of America. We fought a war against each other over it that could have destroyed a country. It was one document, and the belief in that document that held a country together. Think about how difficult that was in the spring of 1865. How this country could have been just completely annihilated, completely torn apart, but one document, and the belief in that document, and the system that that document oversees, held the country together. It was the U.S. Constitution. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for sitting through my little talk there. Rebecca, thank you for being my aide, my visual aide. I appreciate that. I appreciate all of your attendance here today. What I'd like to do, we have a few minutes left. I'd like to just open it up for a discussion for, I guess, about 20 minutes, and open it up for a discussion. Questions? It could be about the Constitution. It could be about anything, really. Anything you want to talk about, I'm here to talk about. So what's on your mind? Anybody? Yes, sir.
In your ROTC breakfast this morning, you touched upon a couple of topics about your experience at Marshall and how proud of Marshall you were, and how you didn't necessarily want people to be feel like their education here at Marshall
Yeah.
was somebody else's. Can you just reiterate on that a little bit?
Well, for all of you that weren't there today at the breakfast, so of course, I mean, I'm very proud of our military, proud of the young men and women that are in our program today. I mean, they're sitting here today among you. These men and women, I have been fortunate for 35 years to serve with the nation's finest people. All right? That's the first thing. And if you really think about it, think about this. Today, only 2 in 10 people 18 to 24 years old, 2 in 10 in that age group qualify to be in the military service, no matter what branch, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, because we have the same quality standards, force quality standards, to join the military. Only 2 of 10 qualify. That's the first thing. So think about that. There's a cut right there, right? Those standards are basically, you got to have a high school diploma. High school diploma. Back in 2008, our country was barely graduating, barely 70% people from high school, barely 70%. Our quality mark was 98%. We wanted 98% in the military to have a high school diploma, and we would waive 2% if you had a GED or something like that. We couldn't get 70%. That's not a recruiting problem. The Army didn't have a recruiting problem in my view. The nation had a recruiting problem, right? Second quality mark. You can't be a felon. 2 of 10. Did I say that? You cannot be a felon. You cannot be convicted. You cannot be, well, I don't want you to be a felon, but you cannot be convicted of a felony. Okay? Third, you have to be physically fit to join the military. And fourth, you cannot be on any medication, prescribed or otherwise. You can never be on illegal drugs, ever. But you cannot be on prescription medication to join the military. Now, after you join everything, all of us, we get old, take a few little, aspirin or whatever, that's okay. But you can't be prescribed on any medication to join. You have to be off that medication. You can't be on Ritalin. You can't. You cannot be. There are a lot of young men and women between that age that are on Ritalin. You can't be at the time you join. Okay? So what I said, I forgot your question.
Just touch upon, your martial experience.
Okay, yes. Well, I will say this with our president present, and we had a great conversation. I had the wonderful opportunity to meet our president today, and I believe it's the start of a great friendship, I hope, sir. I will do anything for this school. I will do anything for this university, because this university gave me something that I didn't even know I had. I still remember the professors. I still remember my ROTC instructors. They saw in me things that I didn't know. I just didn't know was in me, but they saw it. And I really believe because they saw it, they were able to cultivate it. And they were able to pull it out of me when I didn't know I had it. I really believe that is why I'm successful today. I don't mean it's not a corny, I really believe that in my heart. I also told the cadets today, I said, listen, do not let anyone make you feel that when you're in the military, make you feel that you are less of an officer because you went to Marshall, you didn't go to a large, some large university. I mean, it's a good-sized university. But I mean, the ones that you hear about, do not think that your education is less than theirs. Do not think that you're less important than they are, because I assure you, you're not. I don't want to pick on my friends and my brothers and sisters, my West Point classmates, but I'll use that. There is no magic to go into West Point. The second lieutenants that graduate out of West Point are just like them. Just like them. They're no brighter. There's no magic dust that's spread on them to make them better. Nothing. In fact, I hate to say this, and I don't want to say this too mean. There's a whole lot of West Point cadets that didn't make 3-star general, and old Marshall University did. Cool. Yeah. So, I'm just saying. So do not believe for 1 minute that because you went to Marshall University that it sets you behind any of your peers. It does not. It does not. You hold your own by being educated at this university. I am proof of it, and I believe it, and that's the message I tried to share today. Yes, sir.
The Constitution Week was established in 2004.
Yes, sir.
You were graduated before then. Did not have the benefit of going through Constitution Week. When you graduated Marshall, did you have a full appreciation for the Constitution?
I didn't. I did not. When I graduated from Marshall, I did not have a full appreciation for the Constitution of the United States. I did after a couple of years, after I heard this oath being read over and over again. I'm thinking, this is an oath that I took and that everybody's taken. Maybe this is something I ought to look at. So I became just fascinated with the Constitution and read it cover to cover. And we did it in school. We did it in elementary school. Thanks. We did it in elementary, as you're in your schooling, you learn, we had civics. I don't know if they do civics anymore. I'm showing my age, but so it's, we did that in school. But still, when you're 15, 16 years old. When I was 15, I met her. You think you think, yeah, she distracted me. We went to high school together. I was 15. Do you think I was study the Constitution? No. Be real. I'm not going to lie to you. So you don't see it the same way. But after I started seeing and listening to this, Dr. Gilbert, I began to say to myself, I need to look at this. And this is something this is part of my life now. And I realized that about the time that I'm starting to get, Kim and I are talking about, you know what? Maybe we're going to be hanging around this Army. Because when we left Marshall, we didn't think we'd have a career in the Army. I didn't think that would happen. And I thought, well, if this is my profession, so it's like any profession of anybody in here that you do. If it's your profession, you want to make sure you know all the little nuances of your profession. So, sir, that's the answer. That's how I'd answer that. Yes, sir.
I didn't read what year you graduated from Marshall from ROTC. I assume you went in as a second lieutenant. It's a two-part question. And what was your first duty assignment? And the second part of the question is that I know that last year Dr. Alan Gould was in communication with you, and there
Yes.
was some tentative plans for you
Yes.
to come. And something huge came
Yes.
up in the world, and you had to go to someplace.
I can tell you.
And I never knew what you really did.
I'll tell you.
Answer
This is
that
an easy, short question. So I did. Kim and I graduated in 1982 from Marshall University. I was in ROTC. I'm proud to say that I was the Distinguished Military Graduate. I was Cadet Battalion Commander. I was her. I was you. I was very proud of that. 1982 is when I graduated. My first permanent duty station, I had to go to training. I went to flight school at Fort Rucker, Alabama. So after all the training was done, our first duty station was Fort Hood, Texas. We were in Texas. I tell people this. So if you have a road atlas. Ron, I saw one in your car. So you get with a road atlas. I don't know if you all have them. I have them. Kim hates that I have them. But if you look in that atlas and you open it up like that and you look for Texas, Texas is on 2 pages, it's so big. You open that thing up, Fort Hood's in the crack of that map. That's where it is. So I used to tell people, Ron, look for it. It's in the crack of the map. Kali in the crack. So I was stationed in the crack of the map in Texas. That's the first question. The second, yes. I wanted to come last year. I was set to come. And Kim Jong-un in Korea fired a missile. Fired like he did yesterday. Yeah, isn't that interesting? Isn't that something? And when I leave, he shoots missiles. I'm not leaving. All right, get Crutchfield back home, quick. That's what happened. He shot a missile, and I could not go, and because of the duties. And so, yes, so yesterday, I think it was yesterday, he exploded a nuclear underground testing. We know it's a nuclear test, but he won't say it. But it's a pretty big explosion. I mean, that's not a firecracker. I mean, it's not like a, 4th of July thing. It's pretty big. That's what held me back. That's what happened.
So he fired a missile, but what did you do? Where did you go and what happened?
Okay, well, I'll be happy. I don't know if that interests you all, actually, though.
Just a little bit.
Okay.
A little bit.
All right, well, first let me tell you what I do, and it might help. So the Department of Defense divides the world up into geographic regions. And the president picks one 4-star admiral or general to run that region. European Command, EUCOM, in Europe. Southcom, the Southern Hemisphere, charge of the Southern Hemisphere. Northern Command, NORTHCOM, in charge of the continental United States, Canada. Central Command, CENTCOM, that's the one for Iraq, Afghanistan, the people that manage that. AFRICOM, she knows me. Africa Command, the continent of Africa. And then Pacific Command, the Pacific. So my boss is the person selected by the president to command the Pacific Command, the largest command, as I pointed out. It's about 52% of the world. We are responsible for 52% of the globe. I'm the deputy commander of the Pacific Command. I'm like the vice principal, okay? So my responsibilities are I run operations. The commander is commanding, I run operations. So I synchronize the operational, the intelligence, and the operations together. And because that was happening, the White House, Secretary of Defense, and everybody, they were, of course, are asking questions. They're wanting information. And so I had to be there to synchronize that effort, to respond to those questions, to come forth with possible plans of what we could do, what military advice, they asked for our military advice, what should we do? And that's the type of thing that happens. And it happens all the time, all the time. I don't want to scare anybody, but you have no idea. I tell people, they say, what do you do? And I say, well, if you're really interested in it, I can tell you. Most times I tell Kim, she yawns and like, whatever, So,
No, it's scary.
yeah. So I tell people the best, do you all remember several years ago, there was a movie called Men in Black, right? MIBs, right? Will Smith was in it. Remember that movie, Men in Black? And remember the thesis of the movie is like always aliens all over, but you never knew it? Because they kept it from you and they had a little flashy thing. We are like the men and women in black. There are things that happen in this world that you don't know about, nor do you need to know about. Only I don't have a flashy thing. So if it happens, I can't get you to forget about it. That's our job. That's what I do, each and every single day. And there are a lot of things that are not good in the world. And that's what our command does. That's what the men and women, the professionals that we have there are some of the most brilliant people you'd ever want to meet. And I synchronize that effort with 400,000 soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines. I'm, making sure the ships are in the right place. When he fired that, I can tell you this now, it's over. But when he fired that, we had to make sure I had to give orders to move ships into place that have radar that will track the missile, so the missile doesn't hit the United States, or we give the order to shoot down the missile. That's my job. That's my job. That's what I do. I'm responsible for, there's a couple things I'm responsible for. If given that authority by the President of the United States, I am the person that would give the order for that part of the world to shoot down a missile. And I'm also, you asked the question, so I'm gonna tell you. And these are things that, I hope I never have to do. But I am given the authority to shoot down a civilian airliner. And I always say to myself, and there's process for it, okay? I can't just go, well, I want to shoot this down. So yeah, I don't like that airline. They didn't give me frequent flyer miles. So because of September the 11th, which is coming Sunday, and Kim and I are flying out of here on September the 11th, because of that, we now have procedures in place that we will shoot down a civilian airline if it threatens anywhere in the United States. And that authority is given to certain individuals, okay? And there are only 3 people in my command that have that authority, and I'm one of them. So I always say, I hope that I never have to make that decision, because I can only imagine if my daughter and my grandchildren were on that airplane. I don't ever want to have to make that decision. I would have to make that decision. And I don't ever want to do that. So that's what I do. I mean, that's some of the things that I do. Last thing I'll say is, Kim, wow, it's funny. If you look at our structure, Admiral Harris, my boss, is the most powerful military man in the Department of Defense, United States, right? So that would make me the second most powerful person, right? So my wife, she tells me this. If I tell it wrong, you'll correct me. It's true, right? You were asked, so what's it like to be married to the second most powerful man? I'm thinking, yeah, what is it like? Tell me. And it was her moment to brag on me. It was her moment. And you know what she said, Ron? She said, I don't know. To me, he's just Tony. I'm like, Oh, yeah, is that what you said? What'd you say?
Still the same guy I met in high school.
Yeah, that's what you said. I'm like, man. Oh. I know, blew my cover. My head was like that.